But they also have asked that the entirety of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act be declared unconstitutional.
That's
so like
right.
you're saying, they're coming for it all. They're coming for it all. Can I turn to Sadijah? Sadijah, you're a young person. Other young people in Louisiana are watching this legal battle. And what has this meant to you? What are you hearing from your colleagues?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Robinson. It's so nice to talk to you. He's actually a friend of my family, so seeing someone that I know works so hard to press an issue is just, like, great. So for me as a young voter and always, being involved in helping mobilize voters, it just kind of brings back a few issues. Like one, like we have redistricting going on at a local level as well as like the state level here in Baton Rouge, in the East Baton Rouge Parish, with the vetoing of our vote for the St. George district that city that they're trying to create. So just making sure that we know about the importance of voting and are voting in every election, because the Supreme Court, who are making these decisions for us, are appointed by the governor, which brings us back to, voting in gubernatorial elections as well as local ones, early voting, protecting our voting rights, getting involved, demanding accountability, registering ourselves and others to vote, staying informed with organizations like the Legal Defense Fund and the ACLU. So that's kind of what it means to me.
Do you feel that this case, are people aware of the case? Are people aware that there's this congressional battle going on for their right to vote for a member of Congress? Are people really aware of it? Are they, enraged by what's happening? Are they just indifferent? Tell us what your perception is.
I think both yes and no. Like, there are a good amount of people who are aware, because when we vote and see election results come out for Congress or for Senate elections, we see like, wow, we don't feel like we're being fairly represented. And like you mentioned earlier that like Louisiana has such a large Black population that it's not reflective in the people who represent us on a national or state level. So I think that in those sense of what's going on, people are aware. But about the current case and the Supreme Court, I don't think so. I think that we could do more to educate people about what's going on and how to stay connected and get involved in different important dates that are coming up.
Sadijah, this is Press Robinson. When I talk to young people and I talk to them about voting and making sure that they are there, they say to me, my one vote doesn't count. I don't see a reason why I should have to vote, because people aren't doing anything for me. Where is that coming from, and how do we change it?
I think that a lot of that conversation comes from seeing what happens on a national level when you have presidential elections, or what happened this past fall when we had the election for governor. But you see it a lot in our local elections where people may win by 15 votes. So you see that your vote matters. And like, yeah, I may not have voted this time. I should vote next time. And I do think that with redistricting, that could encourage people to see that their vote matters and that they're able to have more representation on a national level than we do currently.
And
it's not just Louisiana. Like when we were in Phoenix, there were so many people who told us that, like, I don't vote because it doesn't matter. Like, my one vote doesn't count. And seeing that the votes do count when you get to elections that are narrowly won or narrowly lost, you feel it. And you're like, man, I wish I could have got that one person who said that their vote didn't matter to go and vote, because if everybody was able to get one more, we would have had the results of the election that we wanted.
Yeah.
Yes, and I want to point out that the reason why groups like LBF and ACLU and Lawyers Committee and Transformative Justice and Black Voters Matters and so many others, the reason why we get out there and fight is that, oftentimes people are depressed and they are, really, it's called a chilling effect. They're so intimidated, so beat down that they really don't think that their vote will make a difference. But one thing I do want to point out to everybody listening, that in Alabama and the new congressional too, people were saying, oh, well, there's going to be a low turnout, because these people aren't going to vote. They, usually have a low turnout. Their turnout more than doubled for that election, for the primary that just happened a couple months ago. More than doubled from 25,000 to over close to 60-something thousand. I want people to understand that when you give people hope and you put the organizing into it and people see that they can make a difference, then their expectations change, their view of themselves change, their view of their power changes. So it's important for us to understand when we look out there and there's 51 million unregistered people in the United States, that we got to talk about how do we get them to not only register but to vote, because we also know that in Florida, where you had elections, decided by less than 20,000 votes, that you had 50 plus thousand people who never voted, who were registered. So there's so much that we can do, right? So I wanted to turn back to Attorney Rohani. Tell us, we talked about the plaintiffs in this case. Tell us something about these judges. Where'd they come from? Who were they appointed by? Did you expect, okay, I mean, come on now. Did we expect this kind of ruling from them? Tell us about these judges.
Well, I think it's important to first note that while district, this litigation was brought in the Western District of Louisiana, so it's a completely different jurisdiction. We had a panel. It was, and again, I would just like to reiterate that the Legal Defense Fund is a nonpartisan organization, and so, but the judges, the three-judge panel, two of the judges are in the Western District. They are appointed by Donald Trump, and the third judge was a member of the Fifth Circuit, Judge Stewart, who was appointed by President Clinton. And so we were concerned about the litigation, not because of who had been appointed, but just because of the extremely rushed process and sort of lack of consideration of what we felt was the weight of evidence required for a case like this that would decide the congressional map for the state of Louisiana for years to come.
Wow.
And Sarah, I just want to be clear because, I'm still sitting here and I'm doing diagrams and trying to understand what's going on in Louisiana. So, Sarah, you've already had the primary election in Louisiana. Is that right?
I believe that given the situation with the map, there has not been a primary election. It's just in advance of the general election in November. Dr. Robinson, please step in if I was incorrect.
No, we have not had the primary.
Oh, okay.
When is the primary election in Louisiana?
Scheduled for November, right? November 24th.
That would be the general.
I don't believe that there was a.
There was no congressional election.
Right, because of all this turmoil.
Oh. Well, and Barbara, forgive me, but this is my point. There just seems to be so much confusion that's been created by this judge with regards to for the voters.
These judges.
For the voters. Yeah, the judges, right? But really, the judge, because I understand it's a U.S. District Court judge that has now held this up. Is that correct, Sarah, where it is now?
It's a three-judge panel, and
it's a three-judge panel.
So there's three judges
from the U.S. District Court.
Right.
It was a split decision.
And that's what's thrown us into turmoil.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I just wanted to go back to something you said about the diagram. We have a diagram that we use for clients and, other folks who are interested, and we're about to get to page 2 of it. We can't even fit what's been going on in this process for the last 4 years on one page anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
But and it just seems to me, Dr. Robinson, that the people that are really losing here, that struggling here, confused here, are going to be the voters that are in Louisiana. I mean,
absolutely.
How do you? Here we are, right, and we're the ones that are supposed to be 10,000 feet in the air, understanding all the theories and the practices. If you're on the ground and you're not studying this every day, how do you know who you're going to vote for, when you're supposed to vote, where you're supposed to vote? I mean, it just seems to me to create a big ball of confusion, Doctor.
It does, and I'm not so sure that's not part of the strategy, but maybe it's not, But what I wanted to ask Sarah was, the state says that they had to know by the 15th of May what that district looked like in order to get ready for November 24th. Well, that has not happened. The 3-judge panel is holding a hearing on the May 30th and has given the state until June the 3rd to come up with another map, which will not happen. So what do we do? What happens on November 24th?
That is the problem. We don't know. And like everyone has stated, the people who are affected here are the voters. And it's just pretty absurd to, at this point, for voters to not know who their congressional representative is after effectively 3 years of litigation. So like Dr. Robinson said, the state stated that they need a map by tomorrow. And like Dr. Robinson said, the state has also advocated in the Supreme Court that if there is no map by tomorrow, then they will have to revert back to HB1, which is the map that three courts stated did not comply with the Voting Rights Act. So that is the state argument at the Supreme Court. Basically what we are mostly waiting on is what the Supreme Court will do regarding the emergency stay applications. Because if that stay is granted, then the remedial hearing will be paused basically until that full appeal can be heard. If the stay isn't granted, then we are just gearing towards that remedial hearing May 30th for a map to be selected by early June.
You see why I say that could have been a strategy all along?
And in addition to that, I think I mentioned before last time I was on here that I received 3 different voter registration cards in the mail with 2 different polling locations. And lucky for me, I always early vote, so I don't go to my local polling place. I go to one of the few early voting locations. But for people who live in my neighborhood, that could have confused them, especially the elderly people who live in my neighborhood or who have been used to voting at the same polling place for the lifetime that they've voted in that area. It could have also diminished our voter turnout because of the misinformation that was sent out.
The other thing that we have to keep in mind here is there's national implications here. Because if Louisiana, for example, gets a second majority black district and get a black representative, that could change the House of Representatives, or at least push it much closer than what it is today. So there's all kinds of things going on, and it's not just in Louisiana.
Yes,
absolutely. But you're absolutely right there, Dr. Robinson. It's not just in Louisiana. We see it happening all across the country. And as you've indicated, with the various states where it's happening, the control of the House is so close. If there's a swing of 3 or 4 congressional seats either way, that it could determine practical policies for the country. And so, and as you've indicated, and I'm right there with you, I think that there's a much larger plan that's at play here to try to keep and maintain political political control.
Exactly.
Sarah, I apologize. Did I cut you off?
And there's a couple things that I want Daryl and everyone to hear. First of all, when the